Hello, my friend. Welcome to Learn English with Daniel. I'm Daniel, and I'm truly happy you're here today. No matter where you are in the world, whether you're relaxing at home, walking through a quiet park, driving to work, or listening before you fall asleep, thank you for choosing to spend these moments with me. Today, don't worry about speaking perfect English. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. Just listen, breathe, relax, and enjoy learning English one sentence at a time. Before we begin, let's take one slow breath together. Breathe in and slowly breathe out. Very good. Now, let's begin. Can I ask you something? Have you ever looked at someone successful and quietly wondered, how did they get there? Maybe they speak English fluently. Maybe they are healthy. Maybe they always seem confident. Or perhaps they have built a life you've always dreamed about. From the outside, their success can look effortless, almost like everything happened overnight. But what if that isn't the whole story? What if, behind every confident person, behind every successful business, behind every beautiful achievement, there were hundreds or even thousands of very ordinary days? Days nobody noticed. Days filled with tiny choices, tiny efforts, tiny habits. Sometimes we believe our lives need a dramatic beginning, a new year, a perfect Monday, a powerful motivation, a life-changing opportunity. We tell ourselves, I'll start when I have more time. I'll start when I feel ready. I'll start next month. Have you ever said something like that? I know I have. And maybe you have too. Imagine holding a tiny seed in the palm of your hand. It's so small, you could almost forget it's there. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't look powerful. In fact, it doesn't look like much at all. Now, imagine planting that little seed in the ground. The next morning, nothing changes. After 1 week, still nothing. You might even wonder, did anything happen? But underneath the soil, where nobody is watching, something beautiful has already begun. Tiny roots are quietly growing, slowly, patiently, little by little. The seed isn't trying to become a giant tree today. It's simply becoming a little stronger than yesterday. And maybe that's exactly how real change happens in our own lives. Today's lesson isn't about becoming perfect, because perfection isn't the goal. Today's lesson isn't about changing your entire life before tomorrow, because lasting change rarely happens that way. Instead, today we're going to discover something surprisingly simple. Small habits, tiny daily actions, the quiet decisions that seem almost invisible, yet slowly shape the person we become. We'll explore meaningful stories. We'll learn useful English naturally. We'll discover everyday expressions. And together, we'll see that success isn't usually created by one extraordinary moment. It's created by many ordinary moments, repeated with care. Before we continue to the next chapter, let's learn today's useful English expression. Little by little. Can you say it with me? Little by little. Excellent. This expression means slowly, step by step, over time. For example, I'm improving my English little by little. Or, little by little, my confidence is growing. I really like this expression because it reminds us of something we often forget. Progress doesn't have to be fast. It only needs to keep moving. Even one small step is still a step forward. Before we continue to the next chapter, I'd like to leave you with one simple question. Don't answer it right away. Just carry it with you for a moment. If you could improve just one tiny habit this week, what would it be? Would you read one page of a book? Practice English for 10 minutes? Wake up 5 minutes earlier? Drink one more glass of water? Or simply smile a little more often? Whatever comes to your mind, don't make it big. Make it small enough that you can begin today. Thank you for joining me today on Learn English with Daniel. I'm grateful that we're learning together. In the next part, we'll discover why our brains love big goals, but often overlook the tiny daily habits that quietly shape our future. Until then, take good care of yourself. Keep learning, keep growing, and always remember, great changes don't usually arrive all at once. They begin little by little, one small habit at a time. There's something fascinating about the way our minds work. Almost everyone dreams about becoming better. We want to become healthier. We want to become happier. We want to speak English more confidently. We want to build a better future for ourselves and the people we love. Those dreams are beautiful. Dreams give us direction. They remind us that life can continue to grow. But sometimes our biggest dreams create our biggest problem. Curious, let me ask you something. Have you ever made a long list of goals? Maybe you wrote them in a notebook, or perhaps you saved them on your phone. Wake up earlier, exercise every morning, read more books, spend less time on social media, practice English every day, drink more water, save more money. Everything looked possible while you were making that list. For a few minutes, you felt excited. You imagined a completely different version of yourself, a stronger version, a healthier version, a more confident version. Then, real life quietly arrived. The alarm clock rang, work became busy, your family needed your attention, you felt tired. And little by little, those exciting goals became quieter and quieter, until one day, they disappeared. If something like this has happened to you, please don't be too hard on yourself. It has happened to almost everyone, including me. A friend of mine once decided to learn English. He was incredibly motivated. On the first day, he studied for nearly 3 hours. He watched grammar lessons, he memorized vocabulary, he practiced pronunciation. When he finished, he felt proud. This is the beginning, he told himself. I'll do this every day. A soft pause. The next morning, he studied for 2 hours. On the third day, about an hour. A few days later, only 15 minutes. Then he skipped one day. After that, another day. Soon, his books stayed closed on the shelf. Weeks passed, nothing changed. One afternoon, we sat together in a small coffee shop. He looked disappointed. He stirred his coffee slowly and said, "Maybe learning English just isn't for me." I looked at him and smiled. Then I asked, "Can I ask you one question?" He nodded. "Why did you decide that studying for 3 hours was the only way to make progress?" He looked surprised. For a few seconds, he didn't answer. Then he laughed quietly. "I never thought about that." Sometimes we believe that bigger effort always creates bigger results. But life doesn't always work that way. Imagine lifting a very heavy box. You might be able to carry it once, maybe twice, but eventually your arms become tired. Now imagine carrying one small book. It feels easy. You could probably carry it all day. Habits work in a similar way. When we try to change everything at once, our minds stop fighting us. Let's learn 2 useful English words. The first word is overwhelmed. Overwhelmed means feeling that something is too big or too difficult. For example, I felt overwhelmed because I had too many goals. Let's say it together. Overwhelmed. Excellent. The second word is consistent. Consistent means doing something regularly over time. For example, she is consistent with her English practice. Or, small, consistent habits create lasting change. That's a wonderful sentence. Let's hear it again. Small, consistent habits create lasting change. What if your goal today wasn't to become fluent in English? What if your goal was simply to learn one new word? What if your goal wasn't to read an entire book? What if you only read one page? One page may not seem important. One new word may not seem impressive. But something interesting happens when we repeat small actions. They slowly become part of who we are. 1 page becomes 10 pages. 10 pages become 1 book. 1 English word become 100 words. 100 words become real conversations. Not overnight, not through luck, but through quiet consistency. Success rarely announces itself with loud applause. More often, it arrives quietly. It looks like someone choosing to practice for 10 minutes instead of waiting for 1 perfect hour. It looks like someone opening a book even after a long day at work. It looks like someone making 1 healthy choice instead of trying to become perfect. These moments are easy to overlook, but they are never wasted. Every small action is like placing 1 more brick. 1 brick doesn't build a house, but without that first brick, there is no house at all. And perhaps that's the quiet beauty of small habits. They don't ask you to become a different person today. They simply ask you to become a little better than yesterday. There's another reason small habits are so powerful. It's something we don't often notice. Every time you repeat a small action, you're not only changing what you do, you're slowly changing what you believe about yourself. Think about that for a moment. When you practice English for just 10 minutes today, you aren't simply learning English. You're quietly telling yourself, I'm someone who learns every day. When you choose to go for a short walk, you're not only exercising, you're telling yourself, I'm someone who takes care of my health. Little by little, your actions begin to shape your identity, and identity is much stronger than motivation. I remember meeting an elderly man at a small neighborhood library. Every Tuesday morning, at exactly the same time, he would arrive carrying a worn brown backpack. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He simply walked to the same table, opened a book, adjusted his glasses, and read quietly for about 20 minutes. Then he smiled politely to the librarian, closed the book, and went home. One Tuesday, I finally asked him, "Have you always enjoyed reading?" He smiled. Then he shook his head. "Not at all," he said. "When I was younger, I hardly read anything." I was surprised. He laughed softly. I didn't become a reader because I loved books. Think about that for a moment. I became a reader because I decided to read one page every evening. One page. That was all. Some nights I wanted to read more. Other nights? He smiled. One page was enough. He looked at the book in his hands for a moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. Years passed. One page became two. Two became 10. Now, reading simply feels like part of who I am. I think there's something beautiful about that. He didn't wake up one morning and suddenly become a different person. He quietly became that person, one page at a time. Sometimes we imagine change as a giant wave crashing onto the shore. But perhaps real change is more like the sunrise. You don't notice it happening every second. The sky changes very slowly. Blue sky becomes lighter. The first soft colors appear. Then, almost without realizing it, the whole world is filled with light. Small habits often work in exactly the same way. Let's learn two useful English words. The first word is identity. Identity means who you believe you are. For example, reading every day became part of his identity. Or, I'm building the identity of someone who never gives up. Let's say it together. Identity. Excellent. The second word is routine. A routine is something you do regularly, often at the same time each day. For example, practicing English after dinner is part of my daily routine. Or, a simple morning routine can improve your day. Very good. Sometimes people ask, Daniel, what's the best habit to start? Some smile. My answer is almost always the same. Start with the habit that's so easy you almost feel silly doing it. Read one page. Learn one English word. Write one sentence. Walk for 5 minutes. Drink one extra glass of water. Because success isn't built by doing something difficult once. It's built by doing something simple again and again and again. Imagine trying to push a large stone. The first push feels difficult. Maybe it doesn't move at all. The second? Still nothing. The third? The fourth? The fifth? You begin wondering if your effort matters. Then, almost unexpectedly, the stone starts to move, not because of one magical push, but because every push mattered, even the ones that seemed invisible. Our habits are often like that. We don't always see today's progress, but today's effort prepares tomorrow's progress, and tomorrow prepares the day after that. Little by little, small actions become lasting results. Perhaps today you won't completely change your life. Perhaps today you'll simply make one better choice than yesterday. And maybe that's enough. Because every meaningful life is built exactly the same way. One quiet decision, one ordinary day, one small habit repeated with patience, until one day you look back and realize how far you've come. There's one mistake that many people make when they begin building a new habit. It's a very common mistake. In fact, most of us have made it at least once. We believe that every day must feel exciting. We think motivation should always be there. We expect ourselves to wake up every morning feeling energetic, confident, and ready to change our lives. But real life is much more ordinary than that. Some mornings you wake up feeling full of energy. Other mornings you would rather stay under the warm blanket for another hour. And do you know something? Both mornings are completely normal. A young woman once told me about her dream of becoming a better English speaker. She had downloaded language apps, she bought new notebooks, she even decorated her study desk with encouraging quotes. Everything looked ready. Everything looked perfect. For the first week, she practiced every evening. She felt excited. She could almost imagine herself speaking English confidently while traveling around the world. Then, something unexpected happened. Work became busy. One evening, she arrived home feeling completely exhausted. She looked at her notebook on the desk. For a moment, she thought, "I'll study tomorrow." Tomorrow came, and she was still tired. Then another busy day arrived. Soon, almost a whole week had passed without opening her notebook. She felt disappointed. She quietly told herself, "Maybe I'm not disciplined enough." Have you ever felt that way? Maybe not about English, maybe about exercise or reading or another habit you wanted to build. A few days later, she decided to try something different. Instead of studying for 1 hour, she made herself a very small promise. Just 5 minutes. Only 5. She sat down, opened her notebook, learned 3 new English words, read 1 short paragraph, then she closed the book. That was all. No pressure, no guilt, no impossible expectations. Just 5 peaceful minutes. The next evening, she did the same thing. 5 minutes. Then another day. And another. Little by little, those 5 minutes became part of her evening. Sometimes she studied longer. Sometimes she didn't. But she almost never skipped completely. Teacher voice. Calm and clear. Let's learn 2 useful expressions. The first one is show up. To show up means to arrive and do what you planned to do. For example, even when I felt tired, I showed up and practiced English. Let's say it together. Show up. Excellent. The second expression is keep going. It simply means don't stop. Continue moving forward. For example, learning English isn't always easy, but I'll keep going. Very nice. These 2 expressions are simple, but they can become powerful habits in your daily life. Show up, keep going. Reflective tone. Sometimes we think success belongs to the smartest people or the most talented people. But often, success quietly belongs to the people who simply keep showing up. Not perfectly, not brilliantly, just consistently. A musician becomes better because they practice again. A writer improves because they write another page. A gardener grows beautiful flowers because they care for the garden every day. And an English learner becomes confident because they continue listening, continue reading, continue speaking, even when progress feels slow. Imagine watching a clock. You stare at the second hand. For a few moments, it almost feels as if nothing is happening. The movement is so small, so gentle, almost invisible. But after 1 hour, the hands have moved much farther than you realized. Time never stopped. It simply moved quietly. Our habits often work in the same way. Today's effort may feel tiny. Tomorrow's effort may also feel tiny. But together, those tiny moments quietly build something much greater. So, if you ever have a difficult day, please remember this. You don't have to be amazing today. You don't have to break a record. You don't have to impress anyone. Simply show up. Do one small thing. Read one paragraph. Learn one English expression. Write one sentence. Listen for 10 minutes. Then gently tell yourself, today I kept my promise. Because every time you keep a small promise to yourself, you build something much more valuable than a habit. You build trust. And once you begin trusting yourself, many other beautiful changes become possible. There's another quiet truth about small habits. At first, they often seem invisible. You don't notice a big difference after one day, or even after 1 week. Sometimes you begin to wonder, is this really working? That question is completely natural because we live in a world that loves quick results. Fast food, fast internet, fast delivery, fast success. We're surrounded by messages that tell us everything should happen quickly. So when progress feels slow, we often think something is wrong. But perhaps nothing is wrong at all. Perhaps real growth has simply been happening where our eyes cannot yet see it. A neighbor of mine loved growing flowers. Every spring, she spent hours working in her small garden. She carefully prepared the soil, she planted tiny seeds, she watered them every morning before work. One afternoon, I walked past her house and noticed something interesting. The garden looked almost empty. There were no colorful flowers, no beautiful roses, no bright sunflowers, just quiet soil. I smiled and asked, "Are you disappointed that nothing has grown yet?" She looked at the garden for a moment. Then she smiled back. "No," she said softly, "the flowers are already growing." I looked around. I couldn't see anything. She laughed gently. Just because you can't see growth doesn't mean growth has stopped. Those words stayed with me for a long time. Reflective tone. Isn't learning English a little like that? One lesson may not change your life. Learning 5 new words today may not feel impressive. Practicing pronunciation for 10 minutes might seem too small to matter. But every lesson, every new word, every sentence you understand is quietly becoming part of you. One day, you'll suddenly realize something. You're reading articles that once looked impossible. You're understanding movies more easily. You're speaking with greater confidence. People might think, "Wow, your English improved so quickly." Gentle smile. But you'll know the truth. It wasn't quick. It was quiet. Teacher voice. Calm and clear. Let's learn 2 useful English words. The first word is patience. Patience means staying calm while waiting for something to happen. For example, learning a new language requires patience. Let's say it together. Patience. Excellent. The second word is gradually. Gradually means slowly, little by little, over time. For example, my confidence gradually became stronger. Or, she gradually improved her English by practicing every day. Wonderful. These are 2 beautiful words because they remind us that many valuable things grow slowly. Sometimes we judge ourselves too early. We plant a seed today and expect fruit tomorrow. We practice for 1 week and expect perfection. When that doesn't happen, we feel discouraged. But imagine if a child learning to walk gave up after falling only once, or if a musician quit after making a few mistakes, or if a painter stopped because the first picture wasn't perfect. Growth has never worked that way. Mistakes aren't signs that you're failing. They're signs that you're learning. Every confident English speaker you admire has made thousands of mistakes. The difference is, they didn't stop. Several years ago, I decided to improve one simple habit: writing. Not for hours, not every time inspiration appeared, just 10 quiet minutes each morning. Some mornings, the words came easily. Other mornings, I stared at a blank page. Nothing seemed interesting. Nothing sounded good. Some days I wondered, why am I even doing this? But instead of trying to write something perfect, I simply kept my promise. 10 minutes. That was enough. Months later, I opened one of my old notebooks. I smiled, not because every page was wonderful. Many pages were ordinary. Some weren't very good at all. But together, they told a different story. They showed someone who hadn't given up. And that made all the difference. Perhaps today, your progress feels too small to notice. Maybe you're still searching for confidence. Maybe you're still translating English in your mind. Maybe you're still afraid of making mistakes. Please don't let today's feelings decide tomorrow's future. Keep watering the garden. Keep planting the seeds. Keep reading, keep listening, keep speaking. One peaceful day after another. Because progress doesn't always arrive with loud applause. Sometimes it arrives quietly and gently changes your life before you even realize it's happening. Sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't a lack of time, and it isn't a lack of talent. It's something much quieter, something that often hides inside our own thoughts. Sometimes it's the belief that small efforts don't matter. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, it's only 10 minutes, it's only one page, it's only one new English word, that won't make any difference? At first, those thoughts may sound reasonable, but let's look at them from another perspective. Imagine you have a clear glass jar. Every evening, you place one tiny blue stone inside it. Just one. The first day, the jar still looks almost empty. The second day, not much changes. After 1 week, there are only a few stones. If someone looked at the jar, they might think, that doesn't seem very impressive. But imagine doing the same thing every single day for an entire year. One evening, you pick up the jar again. This time, it's almost full. You don't remember placing every stone inside. You only remember doing one small action, again and again. Life is often like that jar. Our habits become the small stones that quietly fill our days. Reflective tone. The interesting thing is, we rarely notice the power of today's choice. We notice the result months later. A confident speaker, a healthier body, a peaceful mind, a stronger relationship. These things usually don't appear because of one extraordinary day. They appear because ordinary days were repeated with care. Teacher voice. Calm and clear. Let's learn 2 useful expressions. The first expression is make time. To make time means to decide that something is important enough to include in your day. For example, I make time to practice English every evening. Notice something interesting.
We often say, I don't have time, but sometimes it's really about choosing how we use our time. Let's say it together. Make time. Excellent. The second expression is stick with it. This means don't give up. Continue doing something even when it becomes difficult. For example, learning English takes time, but I'll stick with it. Very good. That's an expression many successful people live by. Warm storytelling tone.
A father once shared a simple story with me. Every night before bed, he read one short story to his young daughter. Some nights, he felt tired after work. Sometimes, he wondered if 10 minutes could really matter. But he kept reading, night after night, year after year. One evening, his daughter walked into the living room carrying her own book. She sat quietly on the sofa, opened the first page, and began reading by herself. The father smiled, not because she had suddenly become an excellent reader, but because reading had become part of her life. She had learned something much deeper than words. She had learned the habit. Children often learn by watching. In many ways, adults do the same. We become the person our daily habits quietly teach us to be. Think about your future for just a moment. Not 5 years from now, not even next year. Simply imagine yourself 3 months from today. 3 months isn't a very long time. Now ask yourself, if I practiced English for just 15 minutes each day, who might I become? Perhaps you would understand more conversations. Perhaps you would feel less afraid to speak. Perhaps you would discover that learning English isn't as difficult as you once believed. It all begins with one decision, not a perfect decision, just a simple one. Many people wait until they feel motivated before they begin. But here's something I've learned. Motivation often arrives after we start, not before. Sometimes the hardest part is simply opening the book, pressing the play button, writing the first sentence, taking the first step. Once you've started, continuing becomes much easier. Action creates momentum, momentum creates confidence, and confidence makes the next step feel a little lighter. So today, don't ask yourself, can I change my whole life? Instead, ask yourself, what's one small promise I can keep before today ends? Maybe it's listening to this lesson until the end. Maybe it's learning today's new vocabulary. Maybe it's speaking one English sentence out loud. Whatever you choose, give it your full attention, because every promise you keep is another quiet reminder that you're becoming someone who doesn't give up. And sometimes that small change in identity becomes the beginning of a completely different future. Have you ever noticed how easily we compare ourselves to other people? Someone speaks English more fluently. Someone else finishes a marathon. A friend gets promoted at work. A classmate starts a successful business. We look at their achievements and quietly ask ourselves, why am I so far behind? Comparison is a very human habit. Almost everyone experiences it from time to time, but comparison can also be misleading because we usually compare our beginning with someone else's middle, or even their ending. Several years ago, I visited a beautiful bamboo garden. It was peaceful.
The wind moved gently through the tall green stalks. Birds sang quietly above the trees. Everything felt calm. As I walked through the garden, I noticed something interesting. Some bamboo plants were very tall, others were much shorter, and a few had only begun to grow. I asked the gardener, "Why aren't they all the same height?" He smiled. Then he picked up a small watering can. Slowly, he watered one of the smallest bamboo plants. "Because," he said, "every bamboo grows at its own pace." He looked at the tallest bamboo and continued, "If this young bamboo spends all its time wishing it were taller, it forgets to keep growing today." Those simple words stayed with me. Reflective tone. Our lives aren't very different. We often look at someone who has been practicing English for 5 years, while we've only been learning for 5 months. We compare our first steps to someone else's long journey, and without realizing it, we become discouraged. But imagine visiting a school. Would you expect a child on the first day of class to know everything the teacher knows? Of course not. Learning always takes time. Growth always takes time. Habits always take time. So why do we sometimes expect ourselves to become experts overnight? Let's learn 2 useful English words. The first word is compare. Compare means to look at 2 or more things and notice how they are similar or different. For example, don't compare your progress with someone else's. Let's say it together. Compare. Excellent. The second word is journey. A journey is a trip from one place to another, but we also use this word to describe personal growth. For example, learning English is a lifelong journey, or everyone has a different journey. Very good. These are words you'll hear often in everyday English. Once I met a woman who was learning English after retirement. She smiled and said, "Sometimes I feel embarrassed. The students around me are much younger than I do. They learn faster than I do." I asked her, "Can I ask you one question?" She nodded. "Who are you trying to become?" She looked surprised. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she smiled again. "A better version of myself." I smiled too. Then perhaps the only person you need to compare yourself with is the person you were yesterday. She became very quiet. A few seconds later, she laughed softly. That feels much lighter. It did, because it was true. Imagine climbing a long staircase. Someone else is already on the 50th step. You're standing on step number 3. If you spend all your time staring at step 50, you might forget to climb step 4. The staircase doesn't ask you to jump. It only asks you to take the next step. One step, then another, then another. That's enough. Perhaps someone listening today has been learning English for many years. Perhaps someone else has only just begun. Neither journey is better. Neither journey is more important, because every fluent speaker was once a beginner. Every confident person once felt uncertain. Every expert once made simple mistakes. And every meaningful habit started as a single choice. So if you ever find yourself comparing your progress, pause for a moment. Take a slow breath and gently remind yourself, I don't need to become someone else. I only need to continue becoming the person I'm capable of becoming. Your journey belongs to you. Your pace belongs to you. Your habits belong to you. And that's what makes your progress meaningful. Little by little, day by day, step by step, you're already moving forward. Even if today's step feels small, it's still taking you somewhere beautiful.
There's something else that small habits quietly teach us. They teach us to trust ourselves. Trust isn't built in one afternoon. It doesn't suddenly appear one morning when you wake up feeling confident. Trust grows through experience. More specifically, through promises we keep to ourselves. Have you ever made a promise like this? I'll practice English tonight. Or, tomorrow I'll wake up a little earlier. Or perhaps, I'll stop checking my phone so often. At first, those promises feel exciting, but when we don't keep them, something very quiet begins to happen. Little by little, we stop believing our own words. We may not notice it immediately, but every broken promise leaves a small crack in our confidence. Not because we're bad people, but because our minds are always paying attention. Our minds remember what we repeatedly do, more than what we repeatedly say. I once met an older gentleman who loved fixing old bicycles. His workshop wasn't large, it wasn't modern. The walls were covered with tools that had been used for many years. Some of the bicycles looked almost impossible to repair. Bent wheels, rusty chains, broken seats. One afternoon, I asked him, "How do you know where to begin?" He smiled, picked up a small screwdriver, and replied, "I never tried to fix the whole bicycle first." He carefully tightened one small screw, then another. He cleaned one chain, adjusted one brake, checked one tire. Everything was done slowly, without rushing, without frustration. I watched him work for almost an hour. Then he looked at me and said, "People often quit because they keep looking at everything that's broken. I simply look for the next small thing I can improve." Those words have stayed with me ever since. Sometimes we treat our own lives differently. We look at everything we haven't achieved, everything we haven't learned, everything that's still difficult. And because the picture feels so big, we don't know where to begin. But perhaps we don't need to fix everything today. Perhaps we only need to ask, what's the next small thing I can improve? Maybe it's learning one new English expression. Maybe it's reading for 5 minutes. Maybe it's going to bed a little earlier. One small improvement may seem insignificant, but over time, small improvements become a completely different life. Let's learn 2 useful English words. The first word is promise. A promise is something you say you will do. For example, I made a promise to practice English every evening. Let's say it together. Promise. Excellent. The second word is reliable. Reliable means someone or something that can be trusted. For example, she is reliable because she always keeps her promises. Or, I want to become reliable to myself. That's a beautiful sentence, because one of the greatest goals in life is becoming someone you can depend on. Imagine meeting a friend who always arrives on time, who always keeps their word, who always supports you when you need help. Over time, you naturally begin trusting that person. Now imagine becoming that kind of friend to yourself. Imagine saying, "I'll practice for 10 minutes," and then,
actually doing it. Not perfectly, not every hour, just honestly, again and again. Each time you keep that small promise, your confidence grows a little stronger. Not because the habit is difficult, but because you're proving something important. You're proving that your words matter. Perhaps confidence isn't something we find. Perhaps confidence is something we build. One promise at a time, one habit at a time, one ordinary day at a time. The beautiful thing is, you don't need anyone's permission to begin. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to wait for Monday, or next month, or next year. You already have everything you need to take one small step today. And sometimes that one quiet step becomes the beginning of a future you never imagined possible. There's a simple truth that many people discover a little too late. Life isn't usually changed by one big decision. More often, it's shaped by the little things we choose to do, or choose not to do, every single day. Think about brushing your teeth. It only takes a few minutes. If you skip it once, nothing seems to happen. If you skip it twice, you probably won't notice much. But imagine skipping it every day for a year. Now the result becomes very different. Small actions, repeated over time, always lead somewhere. The same is true in almost every part of life. Not long ago, I met a young man named Alex. He had just started his first full-time job. He was friendly, hardworking, and full of dreams. One afternoon, we were talking during lunch. He sighed and said, "Daniel, I feel like I'm always busy, but I'm not getting anywhere." I asked, "Can you tell me about a normal day?" He smiled awkwardly. "There's nothing special about it." He woke up late, skipped breakfast, checked social media while getting dressed, rushed to work, came home tired, watched videos for a few hours, then went to bed wondering why nothing in his life was changing. There was nothing terrible about his routine, but there was also nothing helping him move toward the life he wanted. Reflective tone. A few weeks later, we talked again. This time, he had made only 3 small changes. Nothing dramatic. He prepared his clothes the night before. He read 1 page of an English book every morning while drinking his coffee. And before going to bed, he wrote down 1 good thing that happened during the day. That was all. Just 3 tiny habits. After a month, he looked different. Not because his life had become perfect, but because he seemed calmer, more organized, more confident. He smiled more often. And something else had changed. He no longer said, "I'm trying to improve my life." Instead, he said, "I'm becoming someone who takes care of my future." Do you hear the difference? The first sentence focuses on the goal. The second focuses on identity. And identity is much more powerful. Let's learn 2 useful English expressions. The first expression is day by day. This means something happens gradually over time. For example, my English is improving day by day. Let's say it together. Day by day. Excellent. The second expression is pay off. When something pays off, it produces good results after time and effort. For example, all your hard work will pay off. Or, practicing a little every day will eventually pay off. Wonderful. This is an expression you'll hear often in everyday English. Imagine two friends planting small trees. One friend waters the tree only when they feel excited. Some weeks they remember. Other weeks they forget completely. The second friend waters the tree almost every day, not because they always feel motivated, but because it has become part of their routine. Months later, which tree do you think grows stronger? The answer isn't surprising. Nature quietly rewards consistency, and in many ways, life does exactly the same thing. Sometimes we underestimate ordinary days. We think, today isn't important. I'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow eventually becomes today, and today's choices quietly become tomorrow's results. That's why ordinary days matter so much, because most of life is made of ordinary days. Not birthdays, not holidays, not special celebrations, just quiet mornings, busy afternoons, and peaceful evenings, and the small decisions we make inside them. If today feels ordinary, don't be disappointed. Ordinary days are where habits are built. Ordinary days are where confidence grows. Ordinary days are where languages are learned. And ordinary days, when lived with purpose, can quietly create an extraordinary life. So tonight, before you go to sleep, ask yourself one simple question. Did I do one small thing today that my future self will thank me for? If the answer is yes, even if it was only one tiny action, then today was a good day. Because little by little, day by day, those small moments are becoming the story of your life. I'd like to share one more thought with you. Sometimes we imagine that building good habits means adding more things to our lives. Another goal, another schedule, another challenge, and a long to-do list. But perhaps building a better life isn't always about adding more. Sometimes it's about making better use of the moments that already exist. A woman named Emma once told me she could never find time to practice English. "I'm just too busy," she said. "My mornings are rushed, my afternoons are full of work, and by the evening I'm completely exhausted." She believed she needed one uninterrupted hour every day. If she couldn't find an hour, she decided not to study at all. One day, I asked her, "Can I ask you something a little different?" She smiled. "Of course." "How long does it take to make your morning coffee?" She laughed. "About 3 minutes." "And how long do you brush your teeth?" "Maybe 2 minutes." "How long do you wait for the bus?" "Usually 5 or 6 minutes." I smiled. "You may have more time than you think." She looked at me quietly. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then her eyes became a little brighter. I never thought about those moments. The following week, Emma didn't change her entire schedule. She simply changed what she did during the small moments she already had. While waiting for her coffee, she reviewed 5 English words. While brushing her hair, she listened to a short English conversation. While waiting for the bus, she quietly repeated useful expressions. None of these moments were long, None of them felt difficult, but together they became something valuable. After several months, she smiled and said, "English no longer feels like another task. It has quietly become part of my everyday life." That's the beauty of small habits. They don't always ask us to find more time. Sometimes they simply ask us to notice the time we already have. Let's learn two useful English expressions. The first one is make the most of. This expression means to use something in the best possible way. For example, I try to make the most of my free time. Or, she makes the most of every opportunity to practice English. Let's say it together. Make the most of. Excellent. The second expression is little by little. We've heard this expression before, and today I'd like you to notice something. Good English isn't learned in one weekend. Confidence isn't built in one conversation. Success doesn't arrive in one afternoon. It grows, little by little. Sometimes the simplest expressions carry the deepest meaning. Imagine a musician learning to play the piano. Every evening, before dinner, he practices for 15 quiet minutes. Not 2 hours, not 5 hours, just 15. Some evenings he plays beautifully. Other evenings he makes mistakes. Sometimes he feels inspired. Sometimes he feels tired, but he still sits down at the piano. Month after month, his fingers begin moving more naturally. His confidence grows. The music becomes smoother. People who hear him later might say, "You're so talented." But talent isn't the whole story. What they don't see are the hundreds of ordinary evenings when he simply chose to sit down and practice. Perhaps life asks us a very simple question every morning. Not, can you change your future today? But, can you take one small step? That question feels much lighter, much kinder, and much easier to answer. Because almost everyone can take one small step. One page, one paragraph, one conversation, one new word, one healthy meal, one thoughtful choice. Those little moments may seem ordinary, but ordinary moments, when repeated with intention, become extraordinary years. As you're listening right now, you've already practiced your English. You've learned new words. You've listened carefully. You've spent time investing in yourself. That may not seem like a huge achievement, but it matters. It really does. Because every lesson you finish is another quiet vote for the person you're becoming. A person who continues learning, a person who continues growing, a person who doesn't wait for the perfect moment, but gently creates it, one small habit at a time.
Have you ever noticed that we often remember our failures more clearly than our successes? You practice English for 10 days, then you miss one day. Suddenly, your mind whispers, "See, you're failing again." You eat healthy meals all week, then you enjoy one piece of cake. Your mind says, "You've ruined everything." It's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes our minds pay more attention to one mistake than to 10 good decisions. But life isn't measured that way, and neither are good habits. A teacher once drew a large white circle on a piece of paper. Then, right in the middle, she placed one tiny black dot. She held the paper up and asked her students, "What do you see?" Almost everyone gave the same answer,
A black dot. The teacher smiled kindly. That's interesting, she said. Nobody mentioned the large white space surrounding it. The students became quiet. Then she continued, many people live their lives exactly like this. They focus on one small mistake and completely forget all the good things they have already done. Reflect on that. That simple lesson stayed with those students for many years, and perhaps it's a lesson worth remembering today. Imagine you've practiced English every evening for 2 weeks. One evening, you're tired. You fall asleep early. The next morning, you feel disappointed. But let's look at the whole picture. Did one missed evening erase 2 weeks of learning? Of course not. Those words are still in your memory. Those listening lessons still helped your understanding. Those habits are still growing. One cloudy day doesn't mean summer has disappeared. Let's learn 2 useful English expressions. The first expression is get back on track. This means to return to your plan after something interrupted it. For example, I missed one day of practice, but I'll get back on track tomorrow. Let's say it together. Get back on track. Excellent. The second expression is don't give up. It's a very simple expression, but it's also one of the most powerful. For example, learning English takes time, so don't give up. Sometimes simple words carry the greatest encouragement. I once knew a man who enjoyed running every morning. One winter, he became sick. For almost 2 weeks, he couldn't run at all. When he finally recovered, he stood by his front door wearing his running shoes. He looked outside. The weather was cold. The sky was gray. For a moment, he almost stayed inside. Then he smiled quietly. He didn't run 5 kilometers. He didn't try to make up for the missed days. He simply walked to the end of his street and back again. When I asked him why he didn't run farther, he replied, "Today isn't about distance. Today is about returning." I thought those words were beautiful. Sometimes the most important habit isn't doing more. It's simply beginning again. Please remember something. Nobody follows every habit perfectly. Nobody. Not teachers, not athletes, not writers, not musicians, not people who speak English fluently. They all miss days. They all make mistakes. The difference is they don't let one mistake become 1 month or 1 year. They gently begin again, again and again and again. So if you're listening today and perhaps you've stopped practicing English, or stopped reading, or stopped working toward one of your dreams, please don't spend your energy feeling guilty. Use that energy to take one small step today. Open one page. Listen to one lesson. Learn one new word. Speak one English sentence aloud. That's enough. Really, it's enough. Because every new beginning, no matter how small, is still a beginning. Life doesn't ask us to be perfect. Life quietly invites us to continue, to learn, to grow, to begin again whenever we need to. And maybe that's one of the most beautiful habits we can ever build. Not the habit of never falling, but the habit of always standing up again. I'd like to leave you with one final story. It's a simple story, but sometimes the simplest stories stay with us the longest. Many years ago,
An old man lived in a quiet village surrounded by hills. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, he walked along the same narrow path. The people in the village often saw him carrying a small wooden bucket. Some mornings, the bucket was filled with water. Other mornings, it carried small tree seedlings. No one really understood what he was doing. One afternoon, a young boy became curious. He ran after the old man and asked, "Grandfather, why do you walk this path every single day?" The old man smiled warmly. He pointed toward the hillside. At first, the boy saw almost nothing, just grass, stones, and a few young trees. Then the old man said, "Come back in a few years." The boy didn't understand, but he never forgot those words. Several years passed. The little boy grew older. One spring morning, he returned to the same hill. This time, everything had changed. The empty hillside had become a beautiful forest. Tall trees danced gently in the wind. Birds built their nests among the branches. Children laughed while playing beneath the cool shade. The air felt fresh, peaceful, alive. The young man stood quietly, looking at the forest with amazement. Then he remembered the old man's small wooden bucket. One bucket, one seedling, one ordinary morning at a time. The forest had never appeared overnight. It had quietly grown, day after day, while most people were too busy to notice. Our lives often grow in exactly the same way. Perhaps right now, you're planting your own forest. You may not realize it. Every time you choose to listen to English, you're planting another seed. Every time you learn one new word, another seed. Every time you practice speaking, even if your voice shakes a little, another seed. At first, your progress may look small, almost invisible, but one day you'll look back and discover something wonderful. The person you hoped to become has quietly become the person you are. Before we finish, let's learn two final English expressions. The first expression is one day at a time. This means don't worry about everything at once. Simply focus on today. For example, I'm improving my English one day at a time. Let's say it together. One day at a time. Excellent. The second expression is believe in yourself. It means to trust your own ability to learn and grow. For example, believe in yourself even when progress feels slow. Very good. Those are two expressions I hope you'll remember long after today's lesson. As you continue learning English, please be patient with yourself. Some lessons will feel easy, others may feel challenging. Some days you'll remember every new word. Other days you'll forget a few. That's completely normal. Learning isn't a straight line. It has good days, difficult days, fast days, and slow days. What matters most is that you continue walking, little by little, day by day, one habit at a time. Perhaps months from now, you'll be listening to another English lesson, and suddenly, you'll notice something surprising. You're understanding almost everything. You're thinking in English more naturally. You're speaking with greater confidence, not because of one extraordinary lesson, but because you never stopped planting those tiny seeds. Sometimes, The greatest rewards in life arrive so quietly that we only notice them when we stop and look back. And when that day comes, I hope you'll smile, take a deep breath, and feel proud of yourself. Not because you became perfect, but because you chose not to give up. You kept learning, you kept growing, and little by little, you became the person you once dreamed of becoming.
As we sit together during these final moments, I'd like you to do something very simple. Take one slow breath. Now let it go. There's no need to hurry. You've already done something meaningful today. You gave yourself time to learn, and that's something worth appreciating. When we first began this journey, we talked about small habits, tiny actions that often seem too ordinary to matter. A single page, one new English word, a short walk, a few quiet minutes of practice. At first, those habits can feel almost invisible. They're easy to overlook, easy to postpone, easy to underestimate. But now, perhaps you see them a little differently. Perhaps you've discovered that small habits aren't really small at all. They're quiet. That's different. They work patiently, without asking for attention. Just like the sunrise doesn't make a loud announcement, yet it slowly fills the entire sky with light. Imagine meeting yourself again, exactly 1 year from today. Take a moment to picture that person. How do they smile? How do they speak? How do they walk through life? Perhaps they're calmer. Perhaps they're healthier. Perhaps they're speaking English with confidence. Maybe they're reading books they once thought were too difficult. Maybe they're traveling, making new friends, or enjoying conversations they once believed were impossible.
Now ask yourself one quiet question. Did that future version of you become different because of one extraordinary day, or because of hundreds of ordinary days lived with care? I think you already know the answer. Before we say goodbye, let's learn one final English expression. Keep it up. This expression means continue doing the good work you're already doing. For example, your English is improving. Keep it up. Or, you're building great habits. Keep it up. Let's say it together. Keep it up. Wonderful. I hope you'll hear those words often. And even more importantly, I hope you'll learn to say them to yourself. Life will still have difficult days. There will be mornings when you feel tired, days when you feel discouraged, moments when progress seems slow. That's part of being human. Please don't let those moments convince you that you've failed. A cloudy day doesn't change the sky. One missed habit doesn't erase months of effort. One mistake doesn't define who you are. What matters is what you choose next. Take another small step. Open the book again. Listen to another lesson. Practice one more sentence. Smile. Begin again. Not because you're starting over, but because you're continuing the journey. I want you to remember something. You don't have to become the best English speaker in the world. You don't have to learn everything this month. You don't have to race against anyone. The only person you need to become better than is the person you were yesterday.
Even if today's improvement is very small, it still matters. Even if today's habit only lasts 5 minutes, it still counts. Growth isn't measured by speed, it's measured by consistency. And consistency is something you can choose every single day. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening with an open mind. Thank you for choosing to invest in yourself. Every lesson you complete, every word you learn, every habit you build is another step toward the future you're creating. And I truly believe that future is brighter than you may realize today. If today's lesson brought you even one helpful idea or taught you one useful English expression, I hope you'll continue this journey with me. Here at Learn English with Daniel, we're not trying to become perfect. We're simply becoming a little better, day by day, little by little, together. If you'd like more slow and natural English listening lessons, don't forget to subscribe so we can continue learning together. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Keep practicing, keep believing, keep growing. And remember, the smallest habit you choose today may become the greatest gift you give your future self.